I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is a sad clown.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
So today we've got a really special guest. You've heard his brother's story maybe a few episodes ago for all three of you out there, avid listeners. But on The Gloom, we've got a man who started a site in Sarpy, gave that site a pretty cool identity, and then recently has handed the shovel flag. But we've got our man Gobbler on the call today, and excited, Gobbler, just to talk to you and hear your story. And kind of where we always start is talk to us about your first workout and how you got the name. I'm excited to hear this story.
Yeah, so I can tell the short story, the long story, but now that you got me on the podcast, I figure there's no better time to tell the long story. So in 2020, right as the pandemic was starting, I was recovering from a foot surgery. So for the 2 years before, I was in the worst shape of my life. I had this extra bone in my foot. It would flare up. I couldn't play golf, which we'll get into that later, but that's kind of like my jam. That's what that's my spare time. That's my hobby. So I had this bone taken out in January and started this recovery process. In that recovery process, I met my PT, Zorro, and in that PT world, I herniated a disc in my back. So I was just like a hot mess right as the world's falling apart. It was not fun. So at that point, I stepped on the scale, 252 pounds. A couple of months later, so that was back in March, I started a golf league in April with Huffy. He was another team on there, and we played a lot of golf. We've known each other since college. And so he says, "Hey, I got a spot on this golf trip. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yes, I am in. Tell me what it is." He goes, "All right, here's the deal. It's with this workout group that I'm in." And I was like, "Okay." So I've been on Twitter. I've seen, I went to high school with Safe Ride. Lucky obviously posts all about the stuff on Twitter. I have friends who have done it, and I was like, "All right, whatever, man. Like, I'll do it, whatever. I don't know if I'll join your workout group, but we'll see what happens." So we go out to Dismal River. No idea who I'm going to be with, but we show up and we hop in Swingers conversion van with a Grateful Dead Blu-ray or DVD playing already, a cooler full of beer, and then I meet all these other guys, and it's Brazilian, Swinger, Toadstool, Huffy, Wait Time, and me. I have no idea who these people are. I have no idea if they're important. I have no idea what's going to happen. And so, we hop in this van at 5 a.m. and drive out to Dismal River. So I played golf with them for 3 days. And my first F3 workout was after playing, I don't know, 70 some holes of golf, drinking the night before. And the first workout is running up a 550-foot sand dune to the top. Now, again, foot surgery, herniated disc in my back less than a couple of months ago. And they're like, "All right, we're just going to run." And so, like Wait Time, Huffy, Toadstool, they're just gone. Like, they just take up this hill. Swinger's kind of in the middle. Brazilian kind of walks with me the first half. I try to keep up with these guys, but it's just like, I have not done anything to myself. So I got just completely owned up at the top of this dune. There's a great picture of it. I know that Huffy sent out and Wait Time sent out, but so that was my first workout. And then so then on the way there, Swinger is like, I'll keep this G-rated for the listeners out there whose kids are listening, but Swinger's telling a story on our way up there. Now, if you've ever been up north in the Sandhills, you go to North Platte, you go straight north, and out of North Platte, it is a 2-lane road. There's no shoulder. It's grass or very little gravel. And so there's no room for error here. And he's in this huge conversion van, and he's telling us a story. And I won't, again, I'll paint the word picture here, but if you're on the Zoom, you'd know it, but he's got a hand on the steering wheel and he's looking backwards and telling us the story. And he's got a breakfast burrito in the other hand. And again, there's a Grateful Dead concert playing on the TV that's showing us all in the back. And Toadstool and I are grabbing the oh shit handles in this van. And this flock of turkeys is in the middle of the road, and he's not looking at the road. He can't swerve. He can't do anything. And finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, turkeys. And everyone just like looks forward. Swinger like puts the burrito down in his dish and puts 2 hands on the steering wheel, and these turkeys just all like, fly away. And then wait time looks at me and goes, I don't know what we're going to do, but your name is going to have to do something with the turkey. I'm like, oh, all right. I have 3 days to convince these guys that my name should not be anything with a turkey. So then that begins like 3 days worth of me bearing my soul to whoever would listen to try to get me to not be named a turkey. And I knew the rule, right? I knew if I'm going to complain about it, I'm not going to be able to, it's going to be a worse name, right? So I didn't complain about it, but I was like, the goal is set. I have to tell them everything about me. They'll have to find something that's more memorable than this turkey story, and it was not. And so that's the first workout. That's the first name, and so from there that was like June 20 something of 2020. So that's kind of the long version of my first workout and my naming.
Well, that's actually that's pretty cool, because I mean, outside of wait time, I don't think anyone has actually been named at not a traditional AO site. And he was at a traditional site, just didn't happen to be in North Carolina. But you to actually go to Dismal on a golf trip, kudos to you for actually getting up and working out with those guys. But I think that's pretty cool that you went somewhere else. I guess, what were your thoughts when you came back? Were you immediately, okay, I'm ready to keep posting with these guys? Or were you like, okay, Dismal was a once in a lifetime experience, I'm over it?
You kind of get this thing where you post and, completely humbled, right? Like, all these guys are in great shape. And I didn't really understand like to pick up the 6 or stay with the 6. So I didn't really understand that or know about it. But after joining F3, I realized what they were all doing, right? It was like, Brazilian and Toadstool stayed with me kind of that first run up to the top of this sand dune, right? This is like running on a beach, but on an incline. So like, think of like the worst workouts ever in sand. It was awful. So Brazilian and Toadstool kind of like stayed back with me because I could not run very fast up this hill. And then on the way down, Swinger gets up to the top of the hill. He kind of sets up his workout as kind of just this like 2-man grinder style up another, like one station's at the bottom of this tiny little dune, and then one's at the very top of this dune. So it's like you did all these sorts of things, and then on the way down, everyone runs. And I start running. I was like, I'm just completely wasted already just getting to the top of this thing. And then, then Swinger just walks with me all the way down the hill. And so like, that was cool. I didn't really realize what was happening at that point because I was just out of it. But it was really neat. And then I got back and I was super pissed about my name, like super pissed about my name. I was like, are you serious? Like, I've given you so many stories. I'm an international banker. You can name me after my band. you already took Lucky Charms, the Irish thing from him. I'm like, guys, all right, there's just so many ways we could have gone with that. And I was like, but you didn't. You stuck me with this turkey name. And I was like, I'm so pissed. So I think that was like, it was like June 25th or 29th or something like that. And I didn't post for like at least 2 more weeks when we got back because I was pissed. And then Lucky reaches out to me and he's like, all right, I'm queuing at the pit. Get down here. I'm queuing. It'll be fun. We're gonna have a good time. It's an hour workout, and we'll get you back out. I was like, all right, sounds good. So I waited till he queued at the pit, and then started coming back out. And obviously, a bunch of guys that I knew kind of from the Papillion area. Our kids either went to daycare together, like John Claude, or go to school up at Prairie Queen. They were all there. And so it turned out that I was like, okay, this is like a bigger group than I originally thought. There's a workout here in Papillion, and I just need to take care of that. So then it was like, all right, I'm going to start posting more and more and more. And then that kind of really got me going on like a health journey that was much needed in my life. So that's kind of the long story. Like I was pissed at wait time for that first 2 weeks. And then after that, I was like, listen, you can either be pissed about it, or you can kind of like steer into the skid, and just embrace this whole thing. And, as it turns out, it's a pretty darn good name. And I can't be pissed at wait time because it's a really good story. And a lot of other guys don't have a pretty neat story to tell, 15 minutes into a podcast of how they got their name still. So yeah, I'm pretty lucky.
And I don't think we have heard quite the naming story like you have. I mean, that's a really cool story and a cool memory, right? And I'm sure you've got some good relationships with those guys because of that. And it's a name that there's a sound we can make after it too, right? So that's kind of unique, right?
Yeah. Everyone can make the name except for Tater Tot. Tater Tot's messed it up like 7 times. So he kind of just rolls into that skid as well. Like he just kind of goes Gobbler, and so that's his deal. Firewalker, he took that upon himself to copy Tater, and so those two, if they're standing next to me in a COT or the Ball of Man or at Namerama, I know what I'm getting. But yeah, it's kind of like, again, last week's episode with Huffy and the Ching Ching and all these other sorts of things that people say out of people's names. It's kind of cool. And it kind of gives you this personality and something that they hear your name and then they say it. So, every time I hear Huffy, I say the Ching Ching, and, we go from there. So.
What so you referenced kind of your weight on the scale there at the beginning of your fitness journey, and I guess curious, did your foot and the herniated disc ever heal, or from a fitness perspective, how did things progress?
Yeah, and that was the other part is kind of getting through that golf trip. That was really the beginning point where like I was completely done with PT. And Zorro released me from his care and said, all right, you're good to go. The foot's good. The back's good. Let's get down to a better weight, And so, I was playing in a basketball league a couple of years before that. And again, this was kind of the point in my life where I knew I had hit rock bottom, which is when the referee patted me on the back and goes, it's okay, big guy. And I was like, I've never been the big guy. I'm the big guy now. Like, that's the point where it was like, oh crap, this is not what I wanted in my life. And that's kind of where I was like, all right, I need to start working out. And then I started working out, hurt my foot. And then, then it's this whole domino effect. And, at the end of the day, it was kind of that rock bottom that I needed. And then, I obviously had folks like Lucky and Huffy who were there, who were saying, hey, when you're ready, come on out, give this a shot. And they're not hard pressed salesmen. They're the guys who are kind of like, listen, it's here for you when you're ready for it. And when you're ready for it, we'll do that. Well, I don't know if I would have done that without, going on that golf trip with those guys. And as it turns out, 3 of the 6 people on that bus started a workout site less than a year later. and one was fresh off of being the Nantan of F3 Omaha. So it was kind of like, oh, I kind of got like a pretty rosy start to this whole F3 thing. And then having people and places to post and guys who knew where to post and told me, don't go to Paradise because you're going to run 3+ miles. And I was like, oh yeah, this is not for me. Okay, so let's go to the battlefield. Let's go to the Coliseum. Let's go to those places. Let's go to the woodshed. So those are kind of, those are places that are near and dear to my heart because we didn't have anything in Papillion. So those are the first sites I would go to, and made some good friendships and acquaintances in Omaha before kind of Sarpy started to explode down here. So.
Well, and you certainly have gone through a transformative journey, right, from the fitness aspect. I mean, you did come sub for us last week in our basketball league, and I would still call you the big guy on the court. But that's just height, not width.
Yeah, no, his comment was definitely on girth. It was not on height. So, there's a difference there.
Well, definitely love having you. You're a solid pickup for anyone that ever needs a sub. He's your guy. But I did want to kind of touch, you talked about the fitness aspect and how much of a change it made on your life. I guess, F3 brings other aspects to our life, right? And kind of curious on what it has brought for you and the second F, the third F, and maybe you can touch on those aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. The second F, I think it was difficult, right? It's during a pandemic. You join this workout group. All these guys are, super careful. Obviously things had reopened after the closure, and so I wasn't necessarily affected by that. But the get together, the drinks for happy hour, those sorts of things, they didn't happen right away. So the second F all had to happen inside the 45-minute workout and the COT. And again, it's really nice that, Huffy allowed me to tag along on my journey with him, because then I got to also meet kind of all those guys in District 66 and really kind of form a bond with some of those guys. And then that's really where the Sarpy expansion talk started happening. And with that in mind, I was able to develop relationships with the guys in Omaha, and then kind of really start refocusing on how do we grow Sarpy, and work with John Claude and Firewalker and Knobs on that. So, the second F was a struggle to start with. But as things have opened up, the pandemic is in some people's mind completely gone, but we know it's still kind of this shadow that lurks. And so having a wife that's in healthcare, it's been, that was a struggle. And I think that's getting better now as we go to events and see people, and the requirements for masks are gone and those sorts of things. So having that open up a little bit more has been a little bit better for the second F sort of things that we're able to do. The third F stuff, that's always been a challenge for me. I'll talk, Lucky, you'll say this as well, but, we were raised Catholic, and we have this kind of Catholic guilt and that we've been raised with. And that wasn't from our parents, right? That was just kind of like what you were taught. And so understanding that, again, my belief that there is a higher power, but, organized religion sometimes has its downfalls. When some people put the deity necessarily isn't God itself, but the people who claim to be messengers of that God, and they take advantage of people, and they set rules that seem to be completely arbitrary and aren't inclusive of folks who are, have a different sexual orientation, or live a different lifestyle than what we're normally used to. It seems to me like we're excluding people, rather than what my belief is that God is inclusive. He wants everyone to be a part. And when we have some organized religions that take and ostracize folks, it just doesn't sit well with me. And so, my view doesn't necessarily sit with, one religion or another, but again, I do believe that there's a higher power that I pray to, and have been praying to a lot lately, but I don't necessarily think that sits necessarily in Catholicism or, the Lutheran faith or Judaism or Islam, whatever those sorts of religions are. I think you can kind of pick and choose and understand, like, listen, was Muhammad a pretty good prophet of his religion? Absolutely. Are there some nuggets in there that we can take and utilize in our life? 100%. Can we take some of the words of Martin Luther and use those in our life? Absolutely, 100%. But can we also take things from the Bible and say, these are really good nuggets that we can put into our life? Yes. And so my third F journey is probably a little bit different than a lot of folks, because I was so devoutly Catholic for 20 some years. But my faith in a higher power hasn't wavered in that time. But organized religion has. My faith in organized religion has. So I think that's kind of the difference. And so my wife and I struggle with that, with our kids, and how do you put that into action? And so that's our biggest struggle right now. And my biggest struggle as an adult, as a dad, and someone who's trying to lead kids in the right direction.
That's phenomenal, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think I would say, kind of some of the ideas you expressed there tend to be what I would say are the most common things that we've heard, or that I feel like I hear from guys our age, from men kind of in our community now, is kind of this, maybe a way that I was brought up, that was really like the religion was the thing, that our, whether it be our parents or the churches or schools we went to. And I think to be able to still believe in a higher power and kind of explore some of those ideas and thoughts, and I think that's really, really key. And I think that's what, as a group, that's really what we're encouraging guys to do. I know, at least in my faith journey, there've been a lot of times where, like, I thought I was in control, and that's a bad spot to be, right? I still try to do that today, but so I would commend you just for continuing to search and explore and develop that relationship for yourself, because I think the biggest kind of challenge or barrier, right, is if we let the previous experience define our future relationship with whatever that higher power is. So that's cool. What?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel like we kind of steward other guys, like as you were a Psych Q, and we can talk about Danger Zone too. I want to hear your thoughts on that. But how do you feel like within our group, are we stewarding guys to kind of think in terms of higher power, or how do you see that carrying out with some of the guys you've interacted with?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, because there was a guy at work here who I was trying to EH, and he came out to me and he's like, "Listen, I'm an atheist." And I was like, he goes, "I know what the third F is." And I was like, okay. I was like, do you believe that there's a being that's higher than yourself? And he goes, well, yeah, the world is bigger than me. And I was like, then there you go, man. I was like, we're not necessarily preaching. And, there is, I would guess that we lean, as an organization, we lean towards Christianity as a way to kind of spiritually guide people. And my personal belief is that I'm in sales for a living, but I'm not necessarily trying to sell someone on the idea of they have to believe in the same God or the same faith as myself. Because at the end of the day, that's their journey. I will gladly share with someone the journey that I have gone on. But at the same time, I'm not going to convince them of what God can do for them versus what he's done for me. Because if you look at some of us have had, you know, a pretty fairy tale existence, and some of us have not. And so how do you reconcile that as a Christian, right? And so my whole thing here is that, do we lean as an organization to Christianity? Yes. But I think that the third F that we have also leads itself to saying, listen, we can also take that third F and look at leadership as the third F, the faith that we're guiding people who are younger than us, older than us, in the organizations that we belong to, we work with, and our family. And so my third F that I share with, usually in my COTs, is usually through either like there's an organizational psychologist. His name's Adam Grant. He has a podcast. And listen, he's a great follow on Instagram because he doesn't bombard you with pictures, but he sends you out just like a simple nugget. And listen, 1 out of 10 hit with me. There's another one, his name's Simon Sinek. He wrote the book, Find Your Why, or The Power of Why, or something like that. And a lot of sales organizations use that book to be like, all right, what is our why? Why are we selling what we sell? Why are we an organization? And so my whole thing is asking people in my COT, because I want to leave them with a question. I want to leave them with a homework assignment and something to think about. And so my whole thing is like, ask your why. That was my first probably 3 or 4 COTs. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you up at 5:30 in the morning? Why did you read Free to Lead? You know, why do you keep coming out here? And if we find out those whys, then that's kind of what sticks to people. So that kind of gets to I know you're going to ask the question, like, what's the sticky part of this? And we can get to that later, but it's finding that why. They mention that in the book in Free to Lead, but everyone has their own why they're doing this. And then we can, you know, that second F and third F are what stick to people and make them come back out here. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but.
Then we might as well jump into what's your why. Since you've proposed the question to other people, let's kind of turn it back to you and hear what you've got to say.
So obviously I gave you what my rock bottom was when that guy pats me on the back and says, "Way to go, big guy." But I wasn't able to teach when my son was in kindergarten. My foot hurt. I was in such bad shape. I was not able to help him ride a bike on 2 wheels. Like, that was a struggle. And shoot, that was just over 2 years ago. And so the deal I had was, I was like, all right, I need to be a dad who can play sports with his kids, who can walk, who can run, who can ride bikes. And at 252 pounds and a foot surgery and a bad back, that wasn't me. I couldn't do those things. So obviously the easy one was my kids and my family. That was number one. My health was second. Like, I was pretty happy eating fast food 4 or 5 times a week, drinking a lot of IPAs. I had a great time doing it too. But the why is the kids, right? And so that's what brings you out to F3. That was my why. And then that why then changes, right? And I've done this with other workouts that I've done, but the camaraderie that you get, and we've all been there. And again, Free to Lead recognizes this. It's like, I'm going there for Pony. Pony's there for me. Plague's there for Pony. I'm there for the Plague. We all are there for other people. And that's kind of, I think, that first turning point in your F3 journey is when you start going there not just for your own self. You're going there to support someone. And then, turning that back into like the danger zone as a site cue, right? You start this site. I was lucky enough to start a site, and we can go into the story later, but the idea is that, you know, I selfishly wanted to start a site that beat Paradise Island in attendance every week. And Icy is going to be mad at me for saying that. And there's probably other site Qs who think the same way, right? You want to do that. You want to make this site the best that F3 has. And then quickly you realize like the numbers are just unsustainable, right? It's like, I didn't get to talk to 10 people who are at my workout site who, you know, I came to know and enjoy their company, and I wasn't able to do that. And so then it became more of, listen, I really wanted to do like a Paradise site in Sarpy where we ran around the lake a lot. And it just didn't turn out to be that way. Like that was my vision, right? We were going to do some running. We were going to do some stops. We were going to do some spots. And then it turns into like, well, shoot, we have this awesome field. Like, you know, and again, the stereotype when Sarpy started was everyone's a runner. I can tell you, I was the guy who was not a runner. Maybe Knobs may chime in here and say he wasn't a runner too, but it was like everyone was runners. And so, you know, my goal was like, all right, I want like the most diverse site. You can do anything you want to do there. And then it becomes this thing where I'm there for the people who wanted to come to a workout on Wednesday, not just for myself and for my ego. And so it was once that flipped for me that it became a little bit more engaging to get people to do their VQs and to like stop them as they came out to the danger zone for the 4th or 5th time and be like, hi, you've been here 5 times. You haven't queued. Let's get on the calendar. And then you kind of work this. That's when F3 gets you into a sales pitch, is when you're a site queue and you're trying to sell someone to come and queue your site. So, but yeah, so that's kind of the evolution, right? And then really making a difference in your community. That's kind of where in the last year I've really seen that, especially with folks like the Brick Builder, the scholarships, you know, the Heartland Hope Mission, those sorts of things that are like truly fill your cup with the generosity of the guys that are in this organization and in this group. And you know, we've been given a lot of opportunity to help our community, and I think we're doing a pretty darn good job of doing that. So.
Man, I kind of want to circle back a little bit. I think what you just described perfectly encompasses, or is like a microcosm of what the typical life cycle of leadership looks like in that way, right? When you start a site or whatever you're doing, it can seem like they're very selfish regions, like, oh, I think I'll be a great site queue. I want to have the best site. I want to do all these things. But then you talk about this transition stage, like as you become site queue, okay, well, I don't care about the numbers anymore. I care about the relationships that I'm building with the people that are there. I want to make sure that the site is servicing all of the packs that attend. And so if the site is getting too bad or too big, then we're missing out somewhere, and we need to look at expanding and doing other things. I guess the final piece that maybe you didn't touch on is successorship. And so maybe you can talk about that a little bit, what you look for, what goes through your mind there, where you reach a point in your life where you're like, okay, it's time.
Yeah, and you know, obviously with kind of how the discussions went with Tater Tot and Firewalker and, you know, all the leadership team, first FQ, second FQ, the idea of sectoring Sarpy became more and more an idea that we were going to move to. We kind of have to have like a plan, right? And we had some planning sessions, and did they involve an IPA or two? And John Claude had a nice orange soda. Yes, it did. But it came up with some good ideas on how we can be impactful men in our community. And not to say that what we're doing is not impactful to Omaha, but, you know, how do we impact the community that we see every single day in Sarpy, in Papillion and Gretna? And so we kind of said, you know, let's look at that. And so as that started going, my goal was like, I just wanted 1 year. That's what I wanted. I told Tater, I told Plague, I told Firewalker, I told John Claude 1 year. That's what I'll give it, 1 year. And then, you know, as the holidays kind of went around, I kind of got to the point where I was like, oh shoot, I didn't really have a succession plan here. And Ferdinand was the one who was in my ear. And he's like, hey, who you getting? I was like, I don't know, man. I had a list, and you know, we kind of sat down and like, who was on your list, right? And so the name that always popped up on the list was Animal House. And there is no bigger beast of a person working out than Animal House. Like, pound for pound, the beast of Sarpy County. And you know, he took his shirt off one day, had a 6-pack. I was like, I'm done. Like, that's it. This is what we got. This is going to be the succession plan. And then so I texted him. I was like, hey, you know, I would be interested to hear if you would be willing to take over the danger zone. And you know, the lucky thing about iPhone users is you can always tell when someone reads that text. And so I saw the text was read, and I just kind of waited. And he goes, all right, I just need to think about it. So I see him the next morning. I was like, all right, you know, what do you think? And he goes, all right, here's the deal. My son's going on a baseball tournament. Let's sit down and have a discussion when I get back. Sounds good, man. And I was like, all right, I got to be ready to sell. And again, I didn't have to, which is the beauty of F3 Omaha. Like, I just said, listen, man, here's what it is. Here's the site. You know, I was lucky enough that a lot of the groundwork had been, you know, done with Firewalker and John Claude and Tater Tot and Plague you with Rooney to utilize Papio South. And so, you know, my thing was I had a pretty good setup, and I told Animal House that I would do as best I could to leave. I didn't want to leave him an empty pantry of cues that he takes over 1 week and has to find a cue for the next. And so I was like, I was pretty lucky. I'll help you fill out May and as far as I can go, and then turn it over to you, and then it's your site, man. And he's like, all right. And so it was supposed to be just Animal House and I on a Friday night or Friday afternoon at 3. And then F3 Fairy Nectar really hit hard that day. And so then our table went from just me and Animal House there for like 5 minutes together alone to now the table's completely full and people are talking about whatever. And so, you know, I don't think I gave enough credit to Animal House for saying yes and thanking him, but super excited that he's the guy. And I know he's got plans for his own journey and marathons and stuff that he's training for. So I know it may not necessarily be the easiest commitment for someone like him, because like I said, he's doing a lot of training, but he didn't waver. He was such a good dude to take over, and super proud of where we are with the danger zone today. And I know going forward, he's just gonna rock it, and him and whoever he chooses to lead that site going forward, it's going to be a fantastic one. So
I love that, and apologize to the listeners. We're going out of order. I'm letting Pony ask more questions today, but just to back up, where did the name Danger Zone even come from? How did you land on that name?
Well, so we'll go all the way back. So Girl Dad did his first workout when he was his VQ was at the sanitarium, and he did this danger zone workout, right? And so it was snowy. We did the sleds down the hill. And so then when John Claude texted me, he's like, hey, if you commit now, you may be able to name it yourself. And I was like, well, you guys have done all the work. Like, this is kind of crappy. I was like, I'm going to come in here at the last minute, swoop in and name it something stupid. I was like, I can't do that. So I told him, I was like, all right, I'll commit to it, but I'm going to have to talk to some people. So I talked to Tater, and Tater's like, listen, man, there was like a buffalo farm across the street from that place. He goes, I heard the story of like Papio South. He goes, you got to do something with buffaloes. I was like, okay, cool. Don't know what we can do with buffaloes, but we'll try. And then, you know, Rooney and Girl Dad and we went on a site visit on a Sunday. We ran around the lake and looked at everything, looked at the field, looked at the hill, looked at the tires, looked at the telephone poles. And I said, you know, I was like, you know, talk to me. What do you think this site should be named? And Rooney looks at me, he goes, it's got to be the danger zone. He goes, look, we have tons of military down in Papio. The highway that runs Highway 370 is the Strategic Air Command Highway. And he goes, you know, it just makes a lot of sense to name it the danger zone. And so I was like, that's it. Like when the principal of the school, the guy who gives you the keys to use his facility, says that should be the name, I was like, heck yeah. So then I called Lucky. I was like, all right, Lucky, here's the deal. And he goes, oh, that's so awesome. He goes, I'm going to work on a logo for you real quick. So, you know, and when Lucky gets a fire lit under him, like there's just no stopping. So 48 hours, I had like 4 different logos, and, you know, it just worked out perfect. So that's kind of where we named the site. And it was a combination. Sorry, Tater, we didn't choose anything with buffaloes, but we can find another site at Papio South someday that you can name after a buffalo.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I love that. And it is funny. My first idea for a name with the pit was going to be something related to butterflies. And thank goodness we didn't do like, you know, I was looking at like the chasm or some random. So thankfully, so I love that story. You know, it's also really cool. We were talking about ego before, right? And you launched a brand new site before your brother, who had been in F3 longer than you, got to even be a site Q. And the fact that his response was, how can I help? I'm so excited. And it wasn't like hey, wait a minute here. You know, why do you get to launch a new site? So thankful for Lucky and his response.
Well, you know, that's another story. We can get into that over a drink sometime. But like, you know, there's this whole thing with F3, and you have to be nimble, right? And that's the beauty of being in F3 Omaha and being a member of F3. Like, listen, when you write a book, and there's a book for F3 people called Free to Lead, and you don't give people the opportunity to be free to lead in whatever they want to do, you're kind of contradicting yourself, right? And so, you know, then when someone comes up and asks you to lead, that's when you're like, okay, someone sees something in me, and I just got to be flexible with whatever it is. And to those people who are listening that didn't get asked, to ask the question, right? There may be someone out there who is ready to give up a site, but they don't know who to pass it to. And so if someone out there is listening and says, you know, I think I'd be a good site, talk to a site Q, any site Q, right? Or go talk to leadership, go talk to the Firewalkers, the Plagues, John Claudes of the world. And, you know, my guess is that, again, if someone thinks that you're ready to lead, then they're going to come knock on your door, send you a text or send you a Slack message, and you're going to be good to go. And, you know, a torch will be passed in your direction. But you also have to understand, like, there may not be a site that's open, and there may be a better fit that someone sees for you in F3. And so, you know, I'm kind of taking over, starting this kind of second F for Sarpy County. And Sweet Roll texted me, he's like, hey, I think someone was like, hey, we should start a Twitter for F3 Fairy Nectar. And I texted him, I said, do it, get it done, do it now before someone steals your idea. I was like, you've been the guy leading this for the long time. And then we talked, and he's like, dude, I'll just send that back over to you. I was like, no, man, this is decentralized leadership at its best. I was like, when there's an idea, you run with it. You do that starfish, you go back to the center, you look at it, you cut it off, and then you start your own thing. I was like, and that's the beauty of this whole thing, is that we're not bigger than one person. We're a group, and we can kind of do what we want as long as we kind of fit inside this mission of F3. And as long as it fits inside there, then run with it, do it.
Yeah. The Fairy Nectar thing has been cool to watch as that grows, and having guys queue a second F event. Wow, what a genius idea. That's been really cool to watch. You had some practical.
Yeah, and
oh, go ahead.
the site, and he has a shovel flag, and sure, it's just a tabletop one, but it's there. We're planting it, and we're growing the second F in Sarpy County. And again, for all those Douglas County guys or Elkhorn or Gretna guys, you're more than welcome. Follow the F3 Fairy Nectar on Twitter. And the idea is that F3 Fairy Nectar is not going to be at cross train every Friday, that it's going to move. And so when that happens, just be ready to queue a workout. And again, DM Sweet Roll at the F3 Fairy Nectar, and my guess is that he's going to get the shovel flag to you if you want to go, queue a workout up at Barchin, up in Benson or something like that, or downtown Omaha, right? Go do it. Just reach out. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I love that. And you had some really good advice there for guys looking for leadership, or if they feel like they're ready to lead, or if they feel like they've identified a really cool site. A lot of times, if there's a location and you already know, a few guys that would be willing to go there on a regular basis, that's kind of the basic criteria. I think it's more just making sure we don't cross swords and already have something planned, or a guy being kind of devoted to another purpose. But what about FNGs? We like to always kind of get perspectives on what do you tell the new guy, or how do you keep the new guy engaged? What would you say to that?
Yeah, and I'll be the first to say, I haven't been good about personally reaching out. But sometimes it's not the message that you give the new guy, it's the message that you give the guy who brought out the new guy, which is you got to keep on them. You got to keep them coming out. You got to get them to a second F event. And when you do those things, right, it's like, then it's less about the first F and more about all of the Fs. And so I think, you listen to all these other guys who are very eloquent in what you tell FNGs. My thought is that it's not necessarily the FNG that you have to reach out to. It's the guys who are around that FNG to keep them coming back. And again, I'm the first one to tell you I've been awful at that, pretty piss poor. And I need to be better about reaching out to the guys that I know who are FNGs, who work 3 floors below me and haven't been to a workout in 6 months. But you can't tell outside the window right now, but it's getting warmer, it's getting nicer, and it's going to get easier for people to show up. And if we can get them out now and get them to second F events and third F events, it's going to be a recipe for success.
You know what? I appreciate that a lot. I think I kind of had this misconception early on. I actually work with Convoy and Red Ranger now, and I had this misconception that, well, I don't want to bombard people with, hey man, how was it? I always thought that it would be better if you just sat back and were cool about it, and if they wanted to come talk to you about it, then that's the way you should approach it. But then, I think you're absolutely right that we should be calling on active members to be circling back with these individuals, because that may be what keeps them plugged in. So I think that's great advice. I guess as we're getting kind of closer here, one thing we've been asking the guys is words of encouragement. Is there anything that we can be, thinking about, praying for you, words of encouragement we may give you if we see you out in the gloom?
I'll share with you guys this, and this will come out later. But today was a rough day. My grandfather passed away. So 6:45 this morning. So it's been rough. But I know that there's a group of guys who will send a text, right? And the guys who sent texts after the shovel flag pass, that narrows that concentrica that we talk about down from that group of 18 to, or the world to 18, and then from that 18 down to 8. And the guys who do that are just salt of the earth, good dudes. And that's amazing. And the prayers that I know people have sent my way, sent to my family, it's been a really, really tough 6 weeks or 8 weeks for my grandpa. But and my mom, who's been traveling back and forth. But the text I got when I shared that in a COT or for some prayers was amazing. And so obviously I shared this with Tony that, I'm out on the DL right now for an injury and getting better at that. But, keeping engaged, reading back blasts, being on WhatsApp, and having that group, that communication group that you have, whether that's just on Slack, whether it's on text message, whatever it is, you just, the lifeline of guides that you have in this group is pretty amazing. And so, I, again, don't know when you're going to release this, but that's what's heavy on my heart today. But yeah.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for sharing that. And sorry to hear that. I guess I had known you were going through that journey, but obviously didn't realize the significant event this morning. But yeah, we love you.
No, and like, thank you. I appreciate that.
We'll be praying for you. I think, we'll take us out in a Namerama, and then we should post this probably probably next week. But anyway.
Perfect.
All right.
Maybe I'll be in the gloom back then. So
yeah. Let's see. I'll start us off here. Brandon Flehardy, 36, The Plague.
Plague. I'm John Whitworth. I'm 30. My name is Pony Express.
Hey.
Express. Matt Burke, 38, Gobbler.
Gobbler, man. Or gobble. Which is it? Hey,
Yeah, you got it. Yeah,